And I would actually like to thank Professor Sanjeev and Miss Vashisht for giving such background to what I'm about to say, because their discussion is actually very relevant to what I'm about to talk about. So, first of all, I would like to say that my focus is about the feminist literary tradition that is sort of absent in India, and how we can derive it on the basis of the sexuality that is represented in Radhika Santvanam. So I would like to talk about the concept of how the Western literary theory on feminist literature came about, and how there is an absence of its counterpart in India, and how Radhika Santvanam actually plays an important role or can be used as the pioneer text for a feminist courtesan literature. So, first of all, I would like to begin by suggesting from one of the very important feminist critiques who have used the phrase, is a pen a metaphorical penis? So, this is a very pertinent question when it comes to talking about literature that is written by women. What we see is that feminist literature in the West has had a long history, whereas majorly it has been absent in the form of a literary theory in India, despite the fact that the Indian ancient traditions gave a lot of respect and an important position to a section of women in Indian society, which is the courtesan or the ganika. We don't find like a proper sort of established tradition in the sense that we find in the Western context. So, what we need to see is that actually the advent of colonialism in India has led to this loss of a courtesan tradition, which has forbidden us and made us into a more taboo-ridden society, since we are following all those moral dynamics that were introduced to us by the Western colonizers. So, I'd like to suggest that Mudupalani actually is a victim of that morality. And one can find a feminist literary tradition if one attempts a backward journey to the times of prevalence of Ganikas and traces the tradition of courtesan literature in India. So, when discussing about Radhika Santvanam, we need to see that it was banned in the name of obscenity. But what I feel is that the censorship that was imposed on the text was more to do with the fact that it was written by a woman, and less to do with the fact that it was about uh, sexual relationships or physicality and union and things like that. So, as Miss Vashisht has also pointed out, Tharu and Lalita, they suggest that the Pitika or the colophon, that was tracing the legacy of the female writers that existed before Mudupalani herself. When she mentions that also in her text, even that is banned from viewership and readership in popular culture. So that could be something that suggests that, there was a taboo against, after the advent of the colonial enterprise in India, there was a taboo against the women writers. So the writing process itself became a taboo subject because it was being written by women. So what I can say is that even though Mudupalani herself may have not taken this as a task, we as modern day feminists can read her texts and texts of other courtesans as stepping stones for finding a feminist literature tradition in India. So, if we go back to the ancient Indian tradition, we see that our society actually offered two kinds of lifestyle to women. One which was sexually liberated and the educated, that was offered to the courtesan, and the other that was the sexually controlled or the uneducated wife. So, the courtesans were actually uniquely cultured women, and they were proficient in art. They were called Ganikas, and they received a seat of honor in the assembly of men, and discourse, they could discourse with men equally, and they had a lot of respect from the king and were praised by learned men. So we see that Mudupalani herself is a Ganika in the court of Pratap Simha. She was a writer, she was a multilinguist. She wrote in Sanskrit, Tamil, and Telugu. And we have a lot of other courtesans existing in the Tanjavur court who are contemporaries or existed just before Mudupalani, such as the courtesan wife of Vijay Raghav Nayaka or Ramabhadra Rambha or Madhuravani. And we have also had many other courtesans before, during, and after Mudupalani's time, such as Mahalaka Bai, Kanhopatra, and Bangalore Nagaratnama, who actually helped in uh, reinventing Mudupalani's text in the modern context. So what I say is that these women were also writing very rigorously, and they had a very different experience from those that of the wifely kind women. So the reason for their notoriety in the colonial era was created because of the taboo associated with their personality, in the fact that they were sex workers, so to say, or they were courtesans, or they were associated with the art. And next, they were writing literature, and which was, I mean, at that point it was not acceptable amongst the Western custodians, because within the Western tradition you have this understanding that when you look at the politics of creation and all of that, all the dynamics of mythology creation, you see that the Christian father figure is somebody who created man out of his fancy and not out of necessity. And similarly, which is followed by the understanding that man who is a writer or an artist creates out of fancy, not out of necessity, whereas the women body creates a new being out of necessity. The process of reproduction that occurs, or the process of creation that occurs from the female body, is out of necessity and not fancy. So the basic idea that a woman could be a writer, an artist, or somebody who can create for the sake of creation was in itself considered dangerous. If you look at the idea of what comprises of the notions of taboo that were discussed by Freud, he says that things which were either sacred or considered dangerous were both subjects of taboos. So in a patriarchal society, a woman who writes becomes a subject of taboo, because she then gets the power to break free from the shackles of patriarchy, which in turn was actually trying to disrupt it and submit sub uh, sort of make the women submit to the patriarchal notions. And we all are very aware of the fact that most of the times in the modern era, especially after the post colonial era, the intellectual women were considered either to be associated with witchcraft or promiscuity, especially in the Western psychology. So when that sort of narrative came into existence in the Indian scenario, and it was accepted well and received well by the custodians of patriarchy within the Indian context as well, the text of Mudupalani became a very problematic text. So, what I can say is that even though Mudupalani herself does not necessarily intend to frame a feminist literary path for us, the context of her writing is by default a process in the feminist literary tradition. And this is because not only did she write about female sexuality and what she actually sort of raised a question to the aspect that, okay, if the male penis is a metaphorical pen, what organ of the female body is responsible for creation? So Mudupalani actually goes ahead and she says, I'm going to use my entire body as the canvas, the desires, the fantasies of the female body as something that is going to go out and speak about topics that people are not necessarily aware of or are not talking about, because they don't have the experience or they don't have the know-how of the sexual experiences that a courtesan would have. The kind of daily life experiences, the sexuality that she experienced, because she was a courtesan, she was comparatively more liberal to the other women in society. The experiences that she was having were very different, and so she thought that she wants to use her entire body as a as the canvas or for creation. So now how I would like to draw a parallel between how we can take Mudupalani and other courtesan literary texts in the direction of a feminist literary discourse, is that when we see the Western feminist literary theory, we see that they have relied on tracing alternative narratives that have been given by women. These narratives include taboo issues such as homosexual bondings, rebellion, expression of anger or frustration, and there is always a balance of submission and subversion. So Mudupalali actually strikes that balance very well. By using Radha as the Parakiya woman who originally exists as a Parakiya woman in a lot of our traditional Indian texts written by Indian male writers who have talked about Radha as a Parakiya or an adulterous woman, a woman who's not married to the person that she is engaging in love or sexual relationship with. She picks on that tradition, but she makes it her own. Okay. And in other texts, and especially when we talk about how Radha Krishna has always been associated with the idea of bhakti and all of that, in that sense Radha is always a virahani. She's always expressing emotional love, she's in lamentation, there is a sense of separation. But Mudupalani goes one step further. She not only suggests that she's a parakiya, the Radha is a parakiya, but she also establishes the uh, fulfillment of the love, the lust, and the physical needs of the protagonist in this text. And she uses her own experiences. What I feel is that she sees the needs and the sexual desires of a woman character outside of her gender role. She's able to do that because she doesn't really have to confine herself to the moral codes and the uh, code of conducts that are established by society, be it within the Indian non-colonial context or the Western imposed Victorian morality. Either way, there was a double standard for women, that some of them will be considered liberal, but they are the courtesans, they're promiscuous, they're open to sexuality. And other women, the married kinds, they could not be educated, they could not be that liberal, they had to be sexually controlled. So all she keeps all of that aside, and she looks at her as an individual with needs and desires outside of her gender role. So how that actually sort of helps our idea of breaking free from the codes of conduct of a patriarchal society. So she subverts these experiences, and she uses immoral relations and freer sexual opportunities that she herself has had, being a part of the court of Pratap Simha. Probably she observed certain kind of relationships within the royal families that she observed, because she had a first-hand experience of seeing these things as a courtesan. She uses all of those experiences in her writing. And we can see Mudupalani's work, Radhika Santanam, to be an extensive treatise on the tools that can be used by any woman writer to assert her identity. So she uses the socially condemned bonds of adultery, incest, and pedophilia as well. I would like to say that the choice of the female desires and the depiction of female as the object of a male desire or male gratification, that is the actual difference that is there between male writers who were writing about female sexuality and this female writer who is writing about female sexuality. So her whole thing that she wants to subvert the idea of the female is the sex object, the female is uh, there for the male gratification. She subverts that. And how she does that, she allows for, first of all, not only does she allows for the female character, that is Radha, to participate in adultery, she also forces or sort of makes Krishna become a part of an adulterous relationship with her after he is married to another woman, that is Ila. Okay. Then secondly, we have the traditional ideology that Radha was some way related to Krishna as an aunt, a maternal aunt or something. So there is a hidden sense of incest that is existing in other traditions of Radha Krishna writing. She has picked that up. And additionally, what she has done is she has shown that Krishna marries Ela and at the age of puberty. And Ela was Krishna's playmate from a very young age. So there are instances in the entire text where she talks about how she, made that child Krishna get into a relationship with her, and then slowly, there was this sense that okay, I am his aunt, and now he's married to my I was a guardian to Ela, now he's married to her, so I am like his mother-in-law, and again that incestuous overtone is there. But additionally, she goes one more step forward when there are examples of grooming, like she's an adult and she feels guilty at certain situations. Radha feels guilty at certain situations that she was grooming Krishna from a younger age, and probably it was a secret between her and him, that she would always suggest that Krishna needn't tell this to his parents. So what she is actually doing is that the alternative kind of narrative that the Western uh, people were using, like the homosexuals or the rebellious women, she has picked up instances from her courtesan life and used those alternative narratives. So, with this, I would like to conclude my discussion. I would like to say that uh, Mudupalani actually uses a plethora of taboo as motifs for her writing, which helps us pave a path for future women's writing traditions. And her works and works of other courtesans can actually be read as trendsetters for alternative narratives of female sexuality. Sexuality as understood by the male narrative, sexuality understood by women who are in married situations, and then this alternative narrative where somebody who has the opportunity to be free from the social moral codes and follow the sexual desires that she pleases. So because she has the opportunity to be educated and she has the opportunity to explore these morally, forbidden or taboo ridden issues, due to her liberal lifestyle, I can suggest that she's able to establish sexuality in much detail, and therefore a courtesan literature can be used as a stepping stone for Indian feminist literary traditions. Thank you.